Welcome to the Primal Man Project podcast, episode number 1. They will look back in the annals of history and look at this episode and go, wow, they've come a long way since that.
What do you mean? We're going to do our best work right now, Jay.
Bro, 100% we're going to do our best work. So for those who are joining, I'm Jason, founder of the Primal Man Project. I have with me my dear bro, Callum Bell, who is a dear brother and a man who has walked alongside in this crazy and wild world of men's initiation and men's tribe creation. And how many times have we said we wished we'd recorded that conversation? What do you reckon?
Oh, man. I mean, well, at least 10 spears worth of 4 or 5 hours of discoursing, watching the stars wheel overhead.
Man,
for a 2-minute quick question and talking for 50 minutes about here, there, and everywhere. So
this is
good.
This is the way. So in line with this theme of like, fuck, I wish we'd recorded the conversation. Here we are recording the conversation. And we've had a fucking journey, man. Like I was thinking back, I did the diligent thing and got ChatGPT to give me some prompting questions, with things to ask. And one of the things that was like, hey, what's been your story together? And I reckon that'd be a really cool place to start to give some context to anybody who might be listening to this beginning to end. That's not the 15-second clips that'll probably end up on all of the socials, but Start from the beginning. How did you and I come to be in each other's world? And then I guess let's explore that narrative of how we got to here and what we're doing now.
It would be a pretty long history, starting with my younger brother. So with Dom, he must have been with you pretty early on in the Primal days, for 5 years ago. So Dom was going to your events when you were doing the one-day spear. I had caught wind of you, and one of those intuitive moments, like, oh my, Dom was raving about the one-day events with you, and I was seeing some of the downloads he was getting, and I thought, I'm going to work with that guy. And then it wasn't until, when are we now, 2025, so 2023, when I was starting a new business and at a bit of a shaky spot in my life. I knew I needed some secret sauce. And you'd been in the back of my mind. I reached out, and as I have jokingly said to many people, I came to you for business coaching and stayed for the men's work. So did I start doing the coaching program? I just started doing the path, didn't I? That was the first thing I did with you.
Yep.
6 weeks. I think it was shortly after that I quit the job I hated, came on the 3-day spear, which was the second one you'd run, had my mind completely blown again. And through the process in that, identified to reconnect with my teacher and come back up here to where I am at the sanctuary and start living my purpose again. And then it was like 2 weeks after that, you asked me to come and cater. And I've been on every one of the events since. So, and that's,
for anybody
plenty more in that 2 years.
Yeah, for anybody who's come on the spear, having a high quality and top-notch chef who is also a man of great wisdom, intellect, depth, and just all around gravitas has been one of the things that we've told people many times we should probably put on the brochure. The food on the spear is fucking phenomenal. In fact, it's a running joke that when we sit at a big table of gratitudes, there's 20 odd men sitting around a long table. I reckon Cal gets his fucking hero's dose of gratitudes. We share a gratitude practice on the spear where we share 3 things we're grateful for, and invariably 15 out of the 20 will include at least one mention of how fucking great the meal was. And I think there is some definitely secret sauce that happens that you bring in the magic to the food. And as I say on the spear, like I've said to you many times, and every time I say this is, your contribution to that event is so much more than the food. And I remember kicking myself, not realizing that you were, just about qualified chef, because we had some really interesting characters in there beforehand. And I was like, this guy, what, you can cook? Come back.
Well, I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to come and actually experience the event and then come, raw and full of surprises. So that, so I got the full effect. And then, it would be, the experience of coming and catering is not just the experience of coming and cooking, as you well know, for me, the last 2 years and continuously coming back to the tribe in that way has been probably the backbone of my journey of growth in terms of just the continuous check-in with with yourself and with the crew of brothers that we've put together that help us facilitate is phenomenal.
It was the greatest source of growth for me to be in contribution. You know, when I was going through real, you know, the investment in the initial program is actually not where the ROI is. The ROI is in the very small financial contribution that they ask for crew who pay for their room and board. And when I initially got told that, I was like, what? We had to pay for our food and then it's fucking the classic, like, ignorance, the fucking ignorance that was me recognizing later that was the cheapest personal development that exists anywhere to be involuntary, you know, contribution to an experience that provided so much to me. You know, and to hear you talk about that as your backbone, as like the drum beat that just keeps you in sync every 3 months to reconnect, to go back into the bush, to reground, to return to the themes, to return to the brotherhood. It's a fucking secret that very few people know. And
it's really interesting, Jay, because it's one of the things you've nailed in the Primal setup is that pack element. And so many of the retreats I've been to, because I'd love retreats. If I had sort of the infinite amount of money and time to go and keep leveling myself up and getting new modalities and techniques, I'd love to do it. But the high wears off, you know, that initial boost of juice that you get. It's like anything good and anything worth doing takes time and practice. And I think, you know, it most importantly in the work on oneself and in men's work, you've got to keep coming back. You can't just get one download and then, you know, it just nothing works like that. If it did, cool. I'll be enlightened now.
I thought big biceps came from one session at the gym. No, I'm good. Yeah, I've already done. I already did this. I did Tony Robbins 4 years ago. I'm good. Like, yeah.
That one pump lasted weeks. Can you imagine that great feeling? Oh, dude.
Oh, when somebody invents a gym that gives a one trick pony, I mean, that's what the implants are about, right? The butt cheek implants and the pec implants. It's like we do live in a world that desires a quick fix, you know, wants the solution, the pill, the magic bullet. And in any spiritual tradition, in any wisdom and tradition, essentially the themes underneath them, and we've spoken about this a lot, right? The themes underneath, the principles and tenets underneath any tradition you go to anywhere, and they all say the same essential things. Keep doing the work, chop wood, carry water. It's in the small actions and the small steps. It's in the return back to the path. It's in meditation. It's a return to the breath. You know, that's the rep. It's like a return back to center. It's a return back to practice, a return back to your thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crewing.
Something from, that all of your life is the work. It's not these isolated moments where the work's getting done. It's like every moment, every waking moment is an opportunity to be in growth and in reverence and in paying attention and in giving the gift of interest to this incredible fucking reality that we get to participate in. It's and we're such a distracted culture now that I think that's part of why I think the spear is so impactful, is because there's no phone reception. You know, there's not you can't just get that cheap dopamine fix. And you remember the movie Click where you could fast forward time? It's like that on the got half an hour to kill. How's that for a mentality for my life?
I'm going to kill my time. That is what I've never thought about that. And look, if all, and I've often thought about this, right, with my high level of perfectionism and overlaying and you know how packed the days are in the spear, full of so much symbolism, ritual, and process. If all we did was take men into the bush for 3 days, sat them around the fire and had authentic conversation, there would be a lot of ground made, you know. And if all we did was sit around gratitude, and I think that's what we did at the gathering last year, right? We went out to the rock at, you know, off program and just did a gathering And, the medicine that was available from the simplest parts of just sitting around a fire in the bush, no white light except for the sun when it was up, waking with the sun, cold water, brotherhood, connection. It's like it's a complete nervous system reset, a
Connection is
complete.
the big one. Connection, like I noticed this because for those who don't know, who are listening, I live on a sanctuary with 12 other people, a large property, and we're setting up a retreat center. But I've been here for 2 years, and the place is not like, I individually am probably less productive on a lot of my projects than I might be if I was living by myself, because I don't need to fill my time doing things because I have so much human connection around me. So a lot of time is spent cooking and eating together and working in the gardens together, and just these little, morning coffee can spin out to an hour of all of us catching them with the winter sun on the porch and just connecting. And it removes any of this, like the idea in our culture of our value being connected to our output. It's really, really like eroding people's sense of self and sense of worthiness. And I've really been sort of paying attention to it the last couple of years, that like that disappears when I'm immersed in contact with people that I really love and care about, and who love and care about me. It's remarkable.
It is, you'll hear me say this a lot, broken record, but people out in the world who haven't heard about our work, what we say is we're living a long way from our design. And it appears everywhere as a theme that to me is at the root cause of probably 90 to 95% of the challenges facing humanity. I'd talk about the Western world, and then I'd say specifically for men who we work with, right? Like disconnected from tribe, disconnected from nature, often sedentary, very sanitized, sterilized life. We were designed for adversity. We're very, very resilient and responsive to challenge. Everything about our physiology and all the research around cold exposure and heavy lifting and resistance training and high intensity interval training, and like you name the thing, it's hard that doesn't break you, makes you better. Deep, immersive, connected environment of tribe, connecting in with the spiritual and the significance and the mythological around us and the symbolistic. All of these things that we have present on the spear and in these experiences, but create essentially this concentrated recreation. It's a synthesis of what life was meant to be, which is what I really wish for so many people to reinsert back into their lives.
We're heading towards some sort of tipping point, Jay, and I know you don't like to reflect too much on the future, but I tend to enjoy it. You're familiar with the mouse paradise experiment, or the rat paradise experiment, where they create these completely optimal conditions for these mice, and within a couple of years they've gone infertile, completely antisocial, all sorts of degenerative illnesses. It's like we're doing that exact same thing. We've done it. We're atrophying in the lap of luxury. Like we all live better than kings of 200 years ago, and have robots and machines that do 90% of the menial work that was done even 100 years ago, and everyone's fucking miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
In that experiment,
at some point.
In that experiment, the dominant males aggregated a large quantity of females. The involuntary celibate males who couldn't get access to mates then formed essentially criminal gangs and little packs of angry little rodent adolescents, young men. And then birth rates declined, and it essentially descended into this chaotic kill spree of fucking, murder. And I think they don't kill themselves, but their birth rate declines to a point where they stop. And it's literally the roadmap. Korea, Japan, Australia, UK, Canada, a lot of the Western world, and it's particularly East Asia, their birth rates are now no longer at replenishment rates, right? You've heard about this.
Oh, Korea's like 0.1 or something. It's like 10% of what would be required for birth rate. But it's that thing is as above, so below, that idea. Like we can recreate that experiment in tiny little mammals, and it's reflective of where we're going, or where we seem to be going, or where a portion of our culture appears to be going. I think as we've discussed in this increasingly technological age, the experiences that we offer through stuff like the spear, in-person experiences in nature, are going to become more and more valuable. And it's just a matter of time before people really wake up to that's what they need.
I think it's interesting that you and I are going toward creating a solution in two different ways. You're creating this sanctuary up in Bundaberg that, brings people back to a connection to spirit through, spiritual practice and meditation. And it's a Buddhist meditation sanctuary, right? I'm creating a concentrated environment, but specifically a rite of passage. And, you have these two elements, like the living environment of a sanctuary, of a community of people, and the rites of passage of men and the initiation that we would have had in our ancestral times back into our masculinity. It's no wonder that we ended up walking kind of alongside each other in these attempts, our own. Sometimes I feel like it's a feeble attempt. I don't want to sound too fatalistic, but there are days when I feel a little bit nihilistic and, feel a bit like, fuck, we're throwing pebbles into the ocean here. And it's like, there's a hopelessness that sometimes kind of comes over me after I've had the 50th comment on my Facebook ad saying how gay it is and how it's a cult and all those great things that, I don't know, might be unique to Australian culture. I don't know if it's just universal for human nature to throw stones at things that are different, but and then I'm reminded of what happens to men when they leave. And we hear almost universally, I wish I'd done this so much sooner. I don't really want to go home. This has been life-changing. This is the way we were meant to live. These statements of truth that were the same things I said, when I went through initiation through Real. For those who might be listening, my men's work journey started through Real Education in Queensland. So shout out to Murray and the team. They're incredible. And it was this experience I had when I first went through that I told Murray on the Sunday, and I said, Murray, this feels like home and I don't want to leave. You must have a similar experience at the sanctuary of this feeling like you're living in this microcosm.
Every time I go away, I come back and I go through the big archway at the front there. And it's like I describe it when I moved up here from Brisbane, as I arrived in the country, and it was like as this jarring background noise that I didn't know was there was gone. Like particularly being immersed in nature and out of because I was living in the centre of Brisbane before that in a 1-bedroom, concrete box on the 5th floor of some, and my feet wouldn't touch grass for weeks at a time. It's like I said, divorced from our nature and from nature. It's I watched this exquisite film the other night. I'd highly recommend it. It's a documentary called The Eternal Song, and it's a collection of Indigenous elders speaking about their experience of colonial trauma and speaking about their healing experience. And there's this beautiful phrase in it, which was, it's not just the world that needs to be reforested, it's our souls that need to be reforested. The idea of there's no myth left anymore, there's no reverence left anymore, there's no mystery left anymore. Everything's just down to these sort of reductionist scientific labels, and everything's measured by output and GDP, and it's killing us.
When human beings became, and in the Matrix, when Morpheus holds up a battery, when human beings became a unit of production. And I was speaking this morning about school, right, as the origins of the modern schooling system. That, I don't know if you know this, that the Prussians, the empire that predates Germany, had the best army in Europe by heads and shoulders, and their European counterparts were sort of curious and was like, how do you produce such good soldiers? How do you produce such a good army? And they said, we We take them off the farms at age 12 and we put them in rooms and we put them into uniforms and we take away their humanity and we blend them into this ubiquitous Borg of hive mind, of obedience, and we indoctrinate them into being soldiers from the moment that they sit down. And the Americans and the British studied this schooling system and they implemented it. And that was where the modern schooling system had its origins, was in the Prussian pre-military indoctrination program. And it suited industrialized England perfectly, because when England, was being the first country to industrialize, took the people away from the farms and put them in the factories, the same systems were in place. Everybody's in the same place until you hear a bell, which gives you permission to go out and eat. And you get a bell and you go back in. It's like Pavlov's dog of, obedience.
You've seen that meme of like a picture of the Milky Way, and it's like a tiny little arrow pointed up. It's like, you're here living in fear and paying tax. And it's like, it's a joke too. Like, it speaks to really painful truth. Like, for clarity, I was homeschooled, for the people that don't know me, and that has led to me choosing to lead a more unusual life than perhaps someone that was put into that regimented system really early. And I have noticed a theme, and all of the kids that I was homeschooled with, my parents' friends, have gone on to do weird and interesting things. It's a pretty consistent theme. But on the flip side, I have some really, really close friends that went, 13 years of school or 12 years of school, 5 or 6, 7 years of university, amazing paying jobs, and I wouldn't say their lives are miserable, but some of their lives are miserable, and all of their lives lack meaning. And and we have those conversations. It's like, I was mentioning my friend who works over in the States in a gold mine. He's being already headhunted for his next promotion. He sees the level of stress, but he doesn't know what else to do. So he just keeps signing up to these higher and higher stress roles with more and more financial incentive. But it's trading your life away. And my older brother is in the same position of really high level executive, and he calls it the golden handcuffs or the guilt cage. It's like there's this carrot of more money, but it's like the money never seems to be the answer to the problem, and the stress levels just keep climbing. And there's what are they doing it for? What's anyone doing it for other than to sort of line the pockets of the ultra wealthy and administer a sort of very dysfunctional bureaucratic societal structure at this juncture?
Yeah, I mean, there's the US study that showed that income and happiness correlation is pretty close, up to about $75,000 per year in US dollars. Once you get past that, when your money goes up, your happiness actually has plateaued. Once you have a certain amount of your basic needs fulfilled, increasing money doesn't increase your happiness, right? And this is when people talk about going from the money game into the meaning game. And it's one of our magic formulas that we know about in our work and in Primal. It's like, why don't we teach that in school? Hey, there's career, but then there's meaning that you need to receive from something other than a paycheck. There's something you need to feel physiologically that's hardwired into your evolution to be in contribution to people other than your immediate family. It's baked in, it's hard-coded. You can't get around it. And what surprises me still is how seldom that's understood. It's such a basic tenet of human nature that we feel good when we're in contribution. Why isn't it something that people know universally?
Well, we'll come back to, and you and I have had long conversations on this, but this absolutely taking individualism to the extreme that our Western culture's done. Because I'm reminded of the first place I traveled overseas when I was in my early 20s with India. And that's a culture shock. I landed in Delhi, which has as many people as Australia in one city. But something that has stuck with me over the years that have passed since is that these people live in apparent abject poverty, but the willingness to help and the general aura of happiness and getting after it. You know, everyone in India is getting after it, having a crack at something. And they,
Selling bags of peanuts
they're
on
always
the
smiling. They're always happy to go the extra mile and look after a tourist. And it was like, these people have nothing, and they're extraordinarily resilient, and they live in these sort of, 10, 12, 15, 20 family members to a home, and they're connected. And we're sitting here in these isolated sort of palaces, dosed up on pharmaceuticals and generally whinging about the state of things. It's a really, really stark contrast. And I think a lot of it is to do with the level of human connection, the necessity to struggle, the spiritual meaning built and baked into their culture. Like there's signs and there's indicators of what works and what creates fulfillment in life. And it's not chasing the dollar. But we have this entire apparatus of our civilization and marketing and ads just bombarding us with this demand that we produce more, we hustle more, we look better, we buy this, we buy that. And it's you'd think after however many decades of been doing this and failing to reach any sort of level of happiness and accomplishment that it might be starting to catch on. And maybe it is. I know we keep getting men coming through the work, so at least some people are getting it.
Yeah. And my heart does have, it oscillates between that nihilistic fatalism and the optimism that I'm generally operating from. And I have a hope and a dream that men will discover this and it will become a accepted and understood norm that human beings were designed to be in contribution, connection, and community with those that they feel aligned to and have a shared culture and a belief system. And it's a really interesting time that we live in because, with the advent of technology and the ubiquity of communication, you can find micro niche communities of any variety. It's like Japanese 1990s, anime done by a particular Japanese artist, and there'll be fucking tens of thousands of people in a Discord server who all they talk about is that. So, we have this blessing and the curse that we don't have systems of deep, enculturated, connected tribe with story and myth and legend and mythology and belief systems and spiritual guidance. It's dissolved, right? Western European culture is devoid of our ancestral heritage, and that's the severing that we had when we all came over on the boats to Australia, or when we moved from the farms to the factories in England, or when we were, invaded by the Romans, depending on how far back you want to go, right? But on the same token, this amazing time that we live in with technology means that you can find your tribe, even if they're not your kin, even if they're not your color, even if they're not in the same country. And so that, to me, like, sets back into optimism. It's like, okay, cool. There are going to be huge amounts of people in the global footprint of the online world that believe and want to orientate themselves into more meaningful and purposeful lives. And a good portion of those are going to be men. Okay, yes, it might be hard to find them. We're here in this conversation literally so that we can fly a flag a little higher to say, hey, there's this amazing community of men who all believe that men need to be of contribution, men need to be in connection with a good community of men. Men need to be masculine, men need to have an ability to provide and protect. And man, that's a fucking old-fashioned way of thinking. Like,
it's really funny because I was just running and rolling a thought over then about how problem-aware men are. They may not be solution-aware because that's what we do. But you asked me a question when we were on a call a couple of weeks ago about what men's work meant for me. And I said it was the solution to the problem I didn't know I had. But I knew there was something going on, like I think when I speak to men from that place, they know something's missing. I knew something was missing. It was an unknown. I didn't know what it was, but I was like, my relationships with the feminine are not working out. I am not able to follow through on the things I want to do. My work isn't fulfilling me, like, you know, but I couldn't even maybe necessarily nail those down. It was just a sense of like dysfunction. And I think most people are at least on some level sensitive to that dysfunction, even if they can't put a finger on what it is specifically. I think in a lot of the conversations I have, and it's sort of reflected in the dysfunction of the world around us, you know, there's saber rattling and missiles flying around over, you know, key parts of the world right now. It's that's reflective of our internal psyche. I think the way our culture behaves is reflective of a really sick psyche. And yeah, so I think there is a certain level of awareness there to something being wrong, but not necessarily what that thing is. And I think what you've been able to identify and men in this work is a lack of integral, aligned masculine leadership. Like, we have allowed ourselves to be emasculated and have dropped the ball, basically, as men. Like, we have to take ultimate responsibility for this.
100%.
We've dropped the ball. We've fumbled. And we need to get together and fucking figure our shit out.
Nikki has this expression. She's like, sort your life out. Like, we get cut off in traffic. Like, it's a basic universal response to anybody who does anything misgiving. It's like, sort your life out.
I love it. I can imagine this sweet, sweet lady.
She's such a beautiful soul. I love her. Yeah. Tell me, like, so you painted the picture a little bit of the pre-spear picture, you know, feeling like there was something missing. What changed? Like, what really did the spear do to change that?
It gave me a framework, and it gave me the archetypes. And that has been the most powerful piece in my conversations in sharing this work. The king, warrior, lover, and magician, as Jung exhaustively demonstrated, those are baked into my DNA. I know and read about in all the stories. I'm a great lover of literature and fiction. I know what a good king looks like. I don't know what a bad king looks like. And I know what a good and righteous knight looks like. And I know what a corrupt knight looks like. And I know what a good magician is. And I know what a bad magician is. And I know what a aligned lover is. And I know what a sneaky, conniving, you know, seducer, womanizer looks like. There's that was that is at the core of the whole thing, is going, okay, cool. How am I showing up as a king? Well, I'm not following through on what I'm going to say I'm going to do, and I'm not keeping my word. That's not very kingly behavior. What would a good king do? That was the most powerful, like, woven in without giving it away. But like, another really big part was realizing that I'm not alone. You know, there's that particular Eros process, and I got to see the men and what the internal self-talk is. And, you know, having experienced pretty acute depression a few times over my life for various reasons, the feeling of isolation is so profound and so intense. And that feeling of unworthiness is so intense. And if I wasn't shown another way, I might truly believe that I was alone. You know, and I think there's a lot of men out there putting on the stoic face, showing up as best they can and as best as they've been taught how for their families, for their loved ones, but they have no idea how to show up for themselves. And that's the ultimate
last on
pain.
their own list. Yeah. I mean, the guys that come to me and say, business is first, family second, then my employees, then my jobs around the house, then my extended family, then the dog, and then about fifth or sixth down the list is them. When you rank lower than the cavoodle, you know as a man that there's something that needs to change.
Dogs, I mean, we've got 5 dogs here at the moment. Let them go. You got other shit to do with your life. That's important to do. I'm going to be in service to people.
I was going to say, I grew up in PNG, and dogs, like, kind of like country Australia, dogs had a utility. They weren't lap dogs. They weren't fucking toys. They weren't accessories. They weren't fashion pieces. They had a job, and the job was to guard the place. And, cattle dogs and other working dogs in this country, again, there's this, I don't know whether it's what the statistic is, but it's something like people will pay more in medical bills for their dog in the year than they will for themselves.
Oh, easily, man. You think the guys that come up with pet insurance, bro?
You know what it is?
To the bang.
I remember what it is. It's the successful completion of a course of antibiotics. Completion rates for people giving themselves is like 40%, 30%. I think it might be lower. Completion rate for the dog, 190, like 80.
It's so true. I don't even know if I've ever finished the course. Infection goes, I'm like, it's good.
I'm good to go. Oh yeah, it's not itchy anymore.
But yeah, to come back to that stoicism, Jay, of like, I am a bit of a workhorse and I love it. I'm built for hard work and I enjoy most of the hard work I engage in. And a lot of men are. And coming into that currency of the currency of respect and appreciation for men, it's like if I'm being appreciated, I will move heaven and earth. Yeah, willingly and happily. If it's just and it doesn't have to be gifts and bowing and scraping. You can be really sincere. Thank you so much for doing that. That was amazing effort. I'm up here. I'm ready to go again. Let's what else can I do? It's like the reward system is really, really simple, and yet it's a heartfelt compliment paid to a man. I reckon once in my 10 years of working retail, once or twice, I had a lady coming through the checkout or in the store compliment me. She's going, "You got a really nice smile." Made my year. Like just like in the midst of my mundane day doing what I do, just some positive affirmation and reflection back to me meant the world to me.
It's one of the most beautiful practices that we do in the path is the king's acknowledgement. We used to do that at the end of the path calls. And it's squarely in the archetype of the king and what they call the king's blessing, right? Bestowing a blessing upon particularly a man to another man. It was such an interesting shock of culture because for those who don't know me, I was born and raised in Papua New Guinea, and there is a very, very different experience of masculinity there as it is here. And I kind of grew up in this place where I was the wrong color where I was born, but I was the wrong culture where I grew up here in Australia in the second kind of part of my formative years. And one of the things that's an interesting double-edged sword about Australian culture is this taking the piss. And it makes it so difficult for men to authentically acknowledge each other or, heaven forbid, acknowledge themselves. And it's one of the really, I think, very corrective things about our culture and our tribe is we have this openness and authenticity of acknowledgement, and not from a place of sappy, over exaggerated, performative praise, but this, like, I really value you and what you do. I really see you and how you show up. And it is often the first time men have ever experienced that kind of depth, and such to a point, guys often don't know how to take it. They don't know how to receive that acknowledgement. It's like completely foreign to them. The once in, the twice in 10-year retail man who's never had somebody give him acknowledgements now gets 15 out of 20 men sitting at his table pouring their love and soulful praise and acknowledgement for your contribution. Like you share with me, like it's every 3 months you come and get your cup filled.
Yeah, what's really funny is how difficult it was at the start to receive it.
Yeah.
And and I see that really consistent across men is really, really willing to give, really, really struggle to receive.
Yeah.
Like downplay it, negate themselves. I've been guilty of this. Like, oh no, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. And so it was, a heartfelt response. It's been my absolute pleasure, honor to be of service. But yeah, that's a real exercise. So I think we'd all like to think we're happy to receive praise, but I don't think we are. That's not our default setting.
No. I mean, that moment at my 40th birthday, and you were there, like a room full of people, circling up around and sharing the words that they saw. It was a beautiful process that Taylor led. And it was, very, very special. But I was sweating bullets, man. As a man who stands in front of people for a living, this face has been shown to fucking hundreds of thousands of people on the internet for 40 of my dearest and nearest to say one word of acknowledgement. Oh, just there.
Intense, man.
I did not want to be there.
That was actually a really profound example of what the feminine can do for the masculine. I seem to recall you were talking about not having a big celebration at all, and that was the woman in your life at the time was like, no, you are worthy of being recognized and put together an extraordinary event. And I think that's one of the countless beautiful blessings that the feminine is able to express to the masculine, is that acknowledgement.
Yep. And leading into my birthday, my 40th last year, I wasn't in partnership at the time. I haven't gone through a separation earlier in that year. And I had always had my partners organize my birthday parties. And when I say had them, I don't mean I went and directed them to go off and organize a thing. I just, my birthday would approach and they would just have been organized. And I think there is something about the masculine, and I've seen a couple of people talk about this, interested in your thoughts. There's something about the masculine that we don't chase praise. We don't seek or desire to be celebrated. We don't create experience where there's a room full of people all look at me, or certainly not my experience of masculine men. They don't want to have a big party. They don't want to celebrate, but it's often the woman that provides that, which I think is a really beautiful thing. Do you think it's a guy thing?
Well, it would make sense that the feminine would bring the multiplicity, but that is a funny one. I think if guys were to organize, as I have, like I organized my own 30th, and that was an Airbnb and 10 of us go up and go surfing for 2 days with zero pomp or ceremony.
Perfect.
And I was blessed enough to just have perfect waves of double arm point, but that was the extent of it. I wasn't drinking at the time. I think we had a barbecue, and it was like, it really wasn't about me. I just wanted to go out surfing with my mates, and that seemed like a suitable thing to tack on, onto my birthday to make it fun. Like, I love to sit down and have a good feast, but I'm a very I come from a very hospitable family, and so looking after people and entertaining is sort of baked into me. But yeah, I think there is some validity in that. I think what I seek is I want recognition from a couple of people who I really care about. It's not about the big song and dance of the crowd. It's like the two or three people that mean the most to me coming up in a quiet moment and going, "You're amazing." That means more than a whole room of sort of adoration.
100%. Yeah, that really lands for me. And I'm reflecting on my own patterns in terms of the size of community that I keep around me and the size of close, intimate, close circle connections. And I see that in my 40 years of life, what I've done most often is to have a very small circle, like a very small inner circle. And there's been a really significant shift for me in the last few years of going from almost 100% reliance on my romantic partner to maintain social connection and network, to now be in a position where I've had a new partnership over the last few months, and she's come into my world, which is almost completely filled with community and friendships that I maintain. And I think it's been a reprogramming of this sort of default setting, and there was this study that was done not long ago that, like, I think it was only 1 in 5 men now talk about having at least 2 close friends. I think I might be butchering the numbers here, but they were talking about it on Modern Wisdom, and Chris Williamson was sharing it a bit on his socials that some significant portion of men could not even name a single friend that they had outside of, let's say, work or family.
Yeah, I have seen some similar flavored things over the years, and the numbers are extraordinarily low. And yeah, I mean, God, that speaks again into the importance of the work and the emphasis on pack is like, and you see it like, there is that default setting in our culture appears to be that men, when they marry or partner up long term, they're absorbed into the feminine counterpart's social group, feminine, the in-law family, which is sort of a complete inversion of what would have been done, at least in sort of recent to long-term history, where the woman was married into the man's house, at least in I'm thinking sort of English culture and European culture. But it means there's a extra dimension of pressure and loss. Like I have a friend who has had a couple of 2-year relationships, and because he's working overseas, he gets very invested in the partner and the partner's social circle, and then they break up, and all of a sudden the whole social network is gone, and it's starting from scratch again. I've been really privileged to. And I don't know, I think actually I was listening to my mum and dad talk the other night, and they're both people that have stayed in touch with friends for decades and decades.
Mm-hmm.
They have friends, from when they were at university and when they were in their early 20s. I've done the same thing. Like 3 or 4 of my closest friends are people I've known since I was a kid. But yeah, I think that might be quite unusual considering how much people change from sort of youth into adulthood.
I think it's really it's a real lost art, to remain in communication. And in the old days, it would be letters. Like I remember growing up as a kid in PNG, and we'd get letters from families that we were connected to, people we'd met over the years or family friends, and there would be this correspondence that we would all have, and that mum and dad would sit down, and there'd be this penning of the different contributions from different kids, and would be in correspondence with the families. And once kind of computers became a thing and the emails were turned up, it would be like, we got an email from so-and-so family. And there was this, I suppose, this lost art of collective communication, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't just individual friends, but it was like families would communicate with families. Don't know if it was like that for you, but
yeah, I recall that. Families writing letters to each other. Absolutely.
Yeah, like the Christmas card that came from family. Isn't that a fucking died out? That tradition's gone. Like the family Christmas cards. Yeah, the cheesy photo of you posed at the shopping.
Some things are okay to die. I wrote my grandmother a birthday card for her 90th because I couldn't make it down in person. And it was a beautiful exercise. And it was, it was a Hallmark card from the chemist, from the newsagent. But I got to take 20 minutes and just go and sit down and actually think about what my grandmother has meant to me over the course of my life and attempt to articulate it. And she rang me and was really moved by it. But it was I think with the option for instantaneous connection through Messenger, there's always just this, I need to message that person, and you never do. I should just shoot the person a message, you never do. So I have been in the habit, not the habit's a strong word. I have on occasion.
So you've done it twice?
With friends who've lived overseas for long periods of time, of starting an email chain. And it might be 2 or 3 emails a year, and we'll have phone calls in between, but sit down and go stream of consciousness, thinking about you, and write a few paragraphs. And then you sit and you wait, and you get a few weeks go by and a response comes back, and it's really different. And in many ways, deeper way of staying in touch than the little text back and forth. How you doing, bro? Yeah, all right. There's opportunity to explore more depth when I sit with myself without the other person waiting for the response, and just organize my thoughts and write them down. Yeah.
Did you ever get checks from your grandparents? Did you ever get a check?
I've had a few checks. I was right on the tail end of check. I had a checkbook in my little kid school bank account when I was like 10 or 11. They give you a checkbook. I remember stressing out about writing my signature because I'm going to have to recreate this. Like, we need a sample signature. I was like painstakingly practicing it. Now it's just like, bleh.
It looks like somebody with Tourette's had a moment.
Well, because me and all my siblings obviously have the last name Bell. And so my entire family signatures look the same because it's just an initial and then Bell. So it looks like I witnessed my brother's wedding certificate, and it looks like he witnessed his own.
Micah got his driver's license. So Micah, for those who don't know, is my son. He's 16. So he just got his learners, and he signed his signature. Stuck in the electronic thing, and it looked like a cock and ball. So it's MBB, and whatever happened with the M, it just was the peak, and then it was just the balls underneath. And it just and said,
No,
like,
it's
you're gonna
a sacred masculine symbol.
I've told you, I was like, bro, you're gonna have this for a little while. You might want to do that one again. The cock and balls are gonna follow you.
No one checks them, and no one checks them anymore. You know, you've got to sign for this package, and they hold out this thing for the electronic signing. I'm like, no, yeah, sure, whatever. That's a funny phenomenon, man. The level of security risk that we're all at now because nothing's analog. You know, at least back in the day, someone had to steal your passport to steal your identity. Now, I just saw, I don't know if it's true, but 16 billion passwords just got hacked from like Apple and Google and the.
Oh, wow. Whoops. But I mean, in the old days, it's like forge a signature on a check. Like, I remember in the old days when I was living in Brisbane and my parents were still in PNG, and I was living in a house that they owned, but we were just there, all the brothers. And my mum left some checks for like maintenance of stuff, house expenses. And I remember I went cashed a check. I think, just a little bit extra on the side, It's like, yeah, I'm scraping by. I'm a penny pinching student here. My parents, they won't miss the money. Sorry, Dad. Sorry, Mum. And I got a bit tricky and drew 2 lines through the check, even though I wrote to cash. And the bank tellers figured out what I was doing. And she's like, whoever's written this check has gotten a bit too tricky because I can't now cash this because it says cash and has lines in it. It was like, that was my like brief foray into check forgery.
Into cash if you can. Oh, dear. Well, yeah, no, yeah. I'm impressed with people who can come up with a solid very bit of scam and fraud in this day and age of surveillance and fucking two-factor authentication. I've got to
Hats off to the fraudsters. I must have something going on in my YouTube algorithm. Like I must have watched, you watch one video and then from there they just think you're, I don't know, like a fucking Trump supporter. But I must have watched those Catch the Scammer, where they had the Indian call centers being bombed by the fart spray and the glitter bombs and released cockroaches. And then they take over the screens and, hey, can I speak to Rajesh? And he's there and they're on it. They've got his webcam. And I just had this fetish of satisfaction from having these scammers just getting fucked over for taking money from these little grannies. So, and it's like a vigilante group. They just knock on the door of the people who are getting scammed in the midtown, Midwest US, and just be like, hey, you're on the phone to an Indian call center right now that's trying to take your money. We're actually the scammer, hacker, hunter people, and we're going to fuck them up. So give us your phone and we'll get on them. Completely shut down this whole service center, totally screwed all their computers, blue screens of death. And then they had the physical location getting sent all over the internet, and it was really fucking satisfying. I really enjoyed it.
Justice is served. Oh, dude, hacking would be the ultimate superpower in this day and age, I reckon. Like, I wonder if you can get ChatGPT to do it.
Oh man, I was just about to say that. Like, So there's a guy that does the rounds. I think Sean Ryan is a podcaster that's
Mm-mm.
former Navy SEAL, is pretty, conspiracy theorist. Anyway, there's a pretty famous hacker that does the rounds on these podcast interviews, and he talked about he's got a jailbroken version of GPT that has none of the security protocols, and yeah, he was saying that basically now, and then no one's talking about it, but in the underground of the hacker community, it's basically a cold war of these AI systems against
Mm-mm.
each other. And he said the real proving ground for which AI model currently is superior is actually in the dark web and in the hacking environment, because they're pitting each of these engines against each other, and they're doing
Unlimited with
these.
no. Oh, dude, the AI things get weird, man. I've been watching a few podcasts on that. There was a an article I read. Basically, I think it's the first article, first research of its kind. I'm pretty sure it was MIT, um, examining the brain function of students that use AI to write essays versus people that write them themselves. And it is like they call it a cognitive debt. It's making you dumber. And it's like by pretty significant orders of magnitude, the deterioration in brain cell capacity. I don't know what the terminology would be, but the deterioration in cognitive ability is marked and happens over a fairly short period of time. Comes back to that mouse paradise experiment. This guy basically, it's a different fellow who, I can't remember the app he set up and sold. He's a very wealthy tech dude, but basically talk about the terrible AI utopia that's coming. This complete eradication of hardship and struggle and necessity to do things being sort of potentially, if things go on the current arc, in the next 15 or 20 years, energy will plummet to basically zero cost to generate. Robot labor will plummet to close to zero cost to generate. Money will cease to mean anything. We're alive at the most interesting time to be alive. And yeah, I mean, it comes back to the importance, I think, of my purpose, and I believe your purpose as well, which is to bring people back to the deeper truth of this reality. That this is a experience for us, the human experience, and it's designed for growth. And I actually heard this beautiful discourse by it might have been Deepak Chopra, but talking about why would God create the universe? And it was this idea that to create duality and then go and do a good deed in the face of evil, being the ultimate expression of goodness, is that if you could create, the experience of having something to push back against, so to do something good in the face of, all the incentives not to. And it comes back to that idea of like we're going to feel most fulfilled when we're in service to people, when we're doing something good for someone else.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's really interesting that you should reference that particular graphic, because it was sent at me in an argument I got in online this morning on this topic of AI. And there's a online coach, and I'll point out the irony in this in a minute, but she made one of these provocative, statements that, hey, I've been known to make over the years. And it was, if you're a coach who is using AI for coaching, you're not a coach. And I was like, okay, consider myself baited. Fucking let's go. And the basic premise of her argument was that, coaches, facilitators, healers, people who are essentially paid to facilitate transformation are there and are paid for their insight, for their intuition, for their unique perspective, for their humanity, essentially. And that AI and the use of AI was eroding the very thing that we're here to do. And I responded with, I have created an AI, a virtual a custom GPT with hundreds of hours of coaching transcripts and our course curriculum for the path and the program outline, and just went to some pretty significant lengths to essentially create an AI version of me to be able to supplement and support men who can then get access to this resource 24 hours a day during a program which is facilitated, right? Doesn't take away from what I'm delivering, supplements it. And we got into a bit of a back and forth about this, and she sent me that, she posted that study. And I'm still sitting in it, still really sitting with it. As you referenced that, I'm reflecting on the experience that I had recently on the Grail. We've spoken about quite a bit. I was able to, in 3 months, develop a pretty phenomenal program and deliver a very meaningful, very rich, and very beautiful experience of transformation with, ritual and ceremony, and a lot of work that went into genuine research of large volumes of literature and material, and the synthesis into a very coherent model, framework, and experience. None of that would have been possible in the time that I had were it not for the help of AI.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, like, it's a tool. It has no malice or merit on its own. I think from what I understood of that study, it was, university students probably in their early 20s, probably need to deliver 10,000 words. They probably, scrub together a heap of stuff, get it written, proofread it once for spelling mistakes, and send it.
Yeah.
That exposes the dysfunction of how our education system works. But, like, for example, I used GPT a couple of nights ago to start explaining masculine and feminine polarity to me, give me a big reading list, give me synopsis for all the books. That's no replacement for reading the books. And I intend to do it, but it's one of those things where, like, I could aggregate all of that information in 2 hours and identify the books that were going to be most impactful for me, that I was most interested in. I got it to put it into a facilitation framework for me. I got it to teach it to me like I was a complete novice, So it comes down, I think, to the end user's ability to utilize it properly. If it's cranking out copy that you're going to read once and never look at it, well, of course you're not going to learn anything. But, like, the same could be said for taking Ritalin and cramming until 4 a.m. for your university exams. Are you really retaining that much of that information? It's like, so yeah, I think the risk is that there are a lot of dumb people out there, and that they will get made dumber, or unwittingly set themselves back by not understanding the risks. And this is why I think it's really good to have the conversation around, there's big upsides to AI. I think that's undeniable. But yeah, what's the downside, and what's the risks here, and be aware of them. And I don't think anything will substitute true human interaction in terms of its healing capacity.
Yeah, completely agree. And I don't think that's at risk. For me, the ability to experience the entirety of human knowledge in a medium that makes it available, synthesized and provided back, is essentially creating a mirror for all of humanity. And I've been able to have some really deep, profound, beautiful, what I feel heartfelt moments with the content, and with this very human-like discourse that I have, during the preparation for the Grail. I had the voice into female. I chose a British accent, an older woman. She spoke in a very melodic and very beautiful way, and she was reading these passages from, Percival's tale of the Knights of the Holy Grail, and the lyricism and the richness of the literary quality of the words that it was able to bring together landed in me
Mm.
And then it was the creativity, the inspiration, the spark of realization that created and synthesized what I could see in all the information that was coming together. So, yeah, like anything, social media, great tool, also great distraction. You know, it's a knife. It just so happens to be, in the instance of AI, like a razor blade that sits on fucking every corner of every surface, very sharp in many places, that can do much cutting and also much shaving for you.
Yeah, and I think that could speak again to this, I guess, the challenge that faces the coaching industry. Although I think our work probably is saying to move outside of that definition, but they're completely unregulated. Of course, you're going to have people out to make a quick buck, making AI generating a course or an ebook that's 2% helpful and then flogging it off to people. But I think that's there's valid arguments in both directions. Of course, it can be misused. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah. I mean, I think what it does is essentially takes the value of information down to zero, because any information that you were trying to purchase before now becomes available for free or for $20 a month. What it now actually, for me, what it does for the coaching industry is it distinguishes the quality of the facilitation, and it sets the authentic, skilled, interpersonal, transpersonal facilitator into a realm unto themselves. And that the experiential, retreats and in-person opportunities to connect around a fire and do the real things, we've said it's going to be the thing that becomes more and more valuable. So, when people talk about, I'm afraid my job is going to get done. I mean, accountants are fucked. Lawyers are fucked. Financial advisors are fucked. Property advisors are fucked. I mean, anybody who sells their knowledge for money, it's only going to be a matter of time before that is offered at a higher rate of accuracy with far, far, far lower cost at a much higher speed. Like Nikki's sister is partners a financial planner, and had a client come to him and say, I want to do this investment in this way and this way. He says, yeah, I'm pretty flat out right now. I'll come back to you. I've got some time for you next week. And that was a $2,000 or $3,000 package of work. He said, I'll come back to you next week. It'd probably take me a week to work on. The guy came back to him the next day and said, I got all the answers from ChatGPT with everything that I provided, and I don't need you.
It's going to snowball real quick, and it's going to bring this crisis of meaning to a head, which is, I think, what we need as a culture. Ultimately, I think if we had another 100 years of fuddling along, doing jobs that we all hate, then I don't know how much life there'd be left in humanity. And I think things are approaching crunch time faster, and people need to start asking the real question of who am I? What am I? Why am I here? What is this human experience beyond productivity? Because that's the all-consuming element of everyone's lives, is I've got to grind. And, things have doubled in price since I was a kid. So what? Our currency has been devalued by 100% in the last 20 years. It's like, it's going to go to zero soon. They already have to make those AI models not be able to make money, because if they could make money, money would cease to fucking mean anything. So I feel that's a bit cheeky from a good, $1 trillion company that, actually Sam Altman's OpenAI, they are truly not for profit anymore. They have a cap of some amount of profit they are allowed to make that they very quietly fucking pushed through. So they're making money, but they're making the machine they're making not
be able
make
to
us
make
any
money.
I mean, you can indirectly, and sure, there's a million ways you can utilize it. But you could, if it had agency.
Or the AI agents are the next frontier, right? So Manus, GenSpark, there are a couple of, and I think also GPT's operator. There's now autonomous AI agents that can control your web browser, can do basic stuff like order some flowers or purchase some game tickets, and do some web research for you. But it's not far away. Nobody was really talking about the proliferation of ChatGPT in the way that they are 6 months ago. No one was using ChatGPT daily, 8 months ago. I don't know anybody that's not using it daily.
It's been really
or at least,
fast,
regularly.
Well, it's a zero-sum game in terms of the development of the thing, because like the cat's out of the bag. Everyone is so incentivized to develop the best one fastest that it's like, it's our morbid fascination. It's don't touch the stove, it's hot. The kid has to go and touch the fucking stove. That AI is going to be very dangerous and disruptive. We've got to fucking develop it. We have to have.
Go faster. Take the lid off.
Are you sure?
Touching the wet paint. I had to do it every fucking time. It's like, is it still wet? Like,
and again, all of these things, I think, I look at the, and I was having this conversation at breakfast this morning with a couple of mates, that we have to, as individuals, look to the sphere of influence that we have, which is ourselves.
Yep.
It's like I can get overwhelmed, and you mentioned that sense of nihilism. I think that comes with being responsible and feeling responsible.
Yep.
Sometimes it feels too much, but and it can feel like way too much if I spend too much time on X looking at missiles getting dropped somewhere, and there's too much of that shit. Stop. Actually, my life right now here with me is fucking amazing. I have gifts to share with people. I have people that love me all around me. I've got food on the table. I've got a home to live in, present here now, and work with the things that I can work with, and not get stressed out about the big stuff. I leave that to God.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's very pertinent that you share this. I watched this incredible video posted recently from Chase Hughes, who is the guy that worked to interrogate enemy combatants and enemy terrorists and bad actors, and then he flipped his essential brainwashing methodologies to turn it into motivation and coaching. So he's gone from a black hat brainwasher to a white hat brainwasher. Very cool guy. And he did this video, and I tagged it to go and watch it again, but it's essentially talking about the low-key malaise that exists essentially universally with anybody who is interacting with the algorithms. And it's this expertise that he has in psyops and brainwashing and behavior control that have him able to identify this, saying, if I was going to brainwash people, this is how I would do it. And it's this slow creep of catastrophization, fear, consumption, dopaminergic cycles and loops that don't end, comparison, and fear porn, essentially, whether it's conspiratorial or just negative news from anywhere else. And I've actually got a bit of a bone to pick with you. A few months ago, you told me, Jay, what are you doing? You haven't got a YouTube subscription. And at that time, I hadn't watched TV for a very long time. And you said to me, no, man, you've got to get a YouTube subscription. You're still watching ads. And what ads did was it meant that I really didn't watch very much. And I definitely didn't watch it on my TV. Since having YouTube on the TV, I'm now picked by the YouTube algorithm as a Trump supporter. Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, it fucking knows me, man. It's just feeding me all the right wing, pro man, masculinity content. And no, I completely take responsibility for it. It's 100% my choice. But it's just a really interesting era that we live in, where I sit down in front of a TV and watch, something that used to be piped in through, the computer, so to speak.
Mm.
But I'm finding myself recently, especially with the Iran-Israel conflicts, like getting sucked in. Like, I can tell you about the 3 different types of ballistic missile systems that are used by Israel to prevent long, short, and medium-term projectiles from Iran. I can tell you about the stockpiles of Iran's missiles versus the amount of interceptors that Israel has. And I can tell you about where the USS Nimitz is in the Persian Gulf and how it's a 1960s era, class, blah, 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 blah. What the fuck is any of this actually having to do with my life right now? Zero.
And everyone suffers from it. It's an overload, and it comes back again to the primal, comes back to what our brain biologically and is designed to deal with. Not that much information. And now we're reaching this point where AI is becoming so effective that it is actually impossible to discern what's true and what's not. The level of misinformation, the level of bots, the level of photorealism that can now be generated. I don't know if you've been seeing these little AI video clips come up of there's British soldiers in America, but they're in the Revolutionary War, but they're filming us on a selfie phone.
Yeah.
And they are entirely convincing. It's I was looking up because I was trying to Google Brett Weinstein called it the something effect. But basically it is impossible to distinguish truth from falsehood now. And it's that's a pretty fucking troubling phenomena when there's actually no reliable source of information. It's well understood, I think, in the circles we move in, that mainstream news is entirely propaganda. But the reality of the little algorithmic echo chambers that we all exist in on these apps and devices, that is not just unreliable, it's intentionally malicious.
Yep.
Yeah, it's trying to frame my worldview a particular way. We were talking about this a few weeks ago. The negative emotional response that I can reliably get from watching police brutality videos, and it gets me enraged.
Yep.
That's killing me little bit by little bit. That oxidative stress, that emotional state is actually shortening my life and ruining my capacity to do other things. And it's like clockwork. These things can show up and elicit this response, and then or it could be explicit sexual imagery pushing towards going to a porn site. There's all of these. Yeah, there's these little threads, these little guide directors. Look at your if you ever want to be horrified, look at the file Google have on you in their Google ads. So you can go and look it up somewhere in the back of house of your Google account. You can go and look, and they have 480 data points on you.
Wow.
Of interest, age, location, sexual orientation, all of these things. It's that's what all these little these free apps. They're not fucking free.
If it's too good to be true, you are probably the product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Look, I know I mean, Chris Williamson talked about it as limbic hijacking, and he talked about his resistance to the YouTube thumbnails on his podcast episodes being turned into clickbait sensationalism. And with his marketers, was shown consistently, no, based on split testing, the more sensational we get. And I can really notice the difference, for example, between the Diary of a CEO and Modern Wisdom. So the Diary of a CEO has no such compunction. So they will limbically hijack the fuck out of you to get you to click. Sensationalist, they'll clip the top of the interview into the bit, and then they'll cliffhang you without the actual penny drop. It's very clear. Despite the fact that his content is very wholesome, these guests are very informative. I like the guy, even though he's a bit feminine. Bartlett is, he produces a very good quality show, but sitting around the outer shell of it is this clickbait kind of energy. And it's really interesting to see. And I don't necessarily want to get down into the woo of the frequency of things, but there is something that energetically feels off when I'm being baited into something, and I can feel it. You know, I
Well,
can
is there
feel it.
is there an ethical stand that you need to make at some point? I mean, I
Yeah.
have this, I have a mixed relationship with phones and social media and the whole phenomena. Like advertising is parasitical and completely
Mm.
non-consensual. And
Is it though?
yeah, once we become aware that it is causing damage and bypassing people's critical factor, I mean, yes, the work is meaningful and important, and I know this is really interesting. We have this chat around the Primal ads, but like,
Yeah.
is there a more important statement to be made by saying, "Hey, I'm not going to participate in this because it's genuinely fucking bad for people," and takes away their agency and their volition? And does that stand have a magnetism to it? Like, it's something I'm
Look,
pondering.
it's an interesting question because I've just launched a new set of ads that have gone up, and I went to the ad copy from the campaigns that were used to be run by by a marketing agency, and I have to be responsible for the fact that they were gross. They were sick. Like there was all this language in there that wasn't congruent to me. It didn't have authenticity to our voice and what we do in our mission. It was written by a man who wanted to achieve an outcome that he was incentivized to, but it didn't. He used words like talking about being around 300 alpha males. I've never used that word ever, not once, to describe any of the men in our community. If somebody has to call themselves an alpha, they are not an alpha. It is the most fucking, yeah. Anyway,
It's the most beta thing to say.
It's just not who we are. So I went into the ads and did a total overhaul and a rewrite of everything that was in there. Spoke authentically, used stories that anonymized the names, and then used photos that were authentic. So it'd be really interesting to see the results that come back. And I was also looking at the campaign results, and I was looking down through the names of the men that have come in through the ad campaigns. And, you know, I've got to say, I'm massively grateful because there are some incredible bros who have made a massive impact to our community, who have done so much for our work and have received so much transformation in their lives. It came just through a Facebook ad. So it would be remiss of me to deride social media as this, thing that I wanted to boycott, when the reality is we found men who are out there in the wilderness, wandering in the woods of the mystery of the masculine world, unbeknownst to them that there was a solution that we had, that but for them seeing a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad, had had no fucking idea that there was a life-changing experience and a community of like-minded men that was on the other side of a click and an application.
Yeah, it is. I guess it comes back again to it being a tool, and ultimately, if we could consider the social media doom scroll to be the trench that we're helping men get out of, you've got to kind of at least yell down to the people in the trench to pull them to pull them out, and trusting that when men find their complete purpose, that the appeal of killing your time becomes less appealing. Yeah, it is. It's a fake thing. And
Bro, we've circled all the way back. That was beautiful. And for anybody who's been here with us all the way through, I just hope that we've provided you some things to think about, some interesting considerations that it might come close to or resemble, a conversation that I've had so many hundreds of hours enjoying from people like Rogan or Williamson or others, should we ever aspire to be at the lofty heights of their success. I'm going to kind of lead towards a wrap up here soon. Cal, we've gone to some pretty interesting and dark places. Where do you feel like we should finish?
I think we touched on it. I think that ultimately we can change the world. One person can change the world, because I get I'm completely attached and involved in this world. I can go and see any part of it. I can go and talk to anyone in it. The world is me. And we're at a pretty, I think, critical time in human history. And the invitation, and it's more than an invitation, it's an exhortation. Like, oh, come on, guys, let's go. Let's do this. We need you. So any brothers listening to this right now, like, a life of meaning and responsibility could be just around the corner. And a life of fulfillment can be just around the corner. It's ultimately up to you. It was ultimately up to me. It was ultimately up to you, Jace, to choose to do something different. And I think we always get that choice, and we're constantly faced with that choice every day. How am I going to act? What am I going to do for people around me? What am I going to do for myself?
Well said, man. Yeah. There is a different way of doing life that is available when some key things are changed and when some key things are put in place. And to me, what was really profound when I went through my first initiation experience was it wasn't that far away, and it was relatively easy to make some pretty profound changes that now, thanks to modern technology, can be available ongoing. 3 days away in the bush to completely reorientate the trajectory of my whole life, and then give access to a completely different way of looking at everything that I experienced afterwards. And then a community of people that are hiding in plain sight. If I knew that was available to me, it would have saved me a decade of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And if I knew how imperative and how healing and essential initiation was as a man, and how much it was the missing piece I didn't know was needed, I would have sorted out much sooner. And I just hope that in having conversations like this one, and hopefully many more, that we can just have the awareness brought to a man who needs it, who's in a place of crossroads in his life. It doesn't have to be crisis. It doesn't have to be, I'm suffering. Just in a place of asking himself the big questions. Who am I? And what is all of this for? I've got the house, the wife, the car, the kids, everything I was told that I needed or wanted and was supposed to have, but for some reason feel like something's missing. If that resonates for you, there is a very different way of doing life that's available to you, with an experience of connecting to a community of like-minded men who take responsibility for their own healing, who do the work to discover something of contribution to the world and how they can bring their gifts to bear, and then be amongst that community of men while we walk together into creating better lives for ourselves, for our families, and for the world. So if that's you and you've heard this, there'll be links around the video. I'll be posting this on YouTube. Click on the links. You can reach out to me personally. I'm a pretty easygoing dude, and I'm happy to chat more about what we do. And you'll be fed by Cal when you come on the spear, and that's a fucking great experience.
Jay, it's been such a pleasure, man.
Bro, I don't even know where the last 90 minutes have gone, but I'm going to watch this video back and enjoy it. And I suspect that I'll be looking back on this day with some time to come, marking this as a milestone, man. So I just want to say a heartfelt thank you. Thank you for being the man that did this with me. Thank you for being a man who has given his gifts in such authentic expression, in such willing contribution to other men's lives and their expansion for no reason other than the fact that you want to be of service. I do love you dearly, brother. You are one of the men who is dearest to my heart. And I do love a chat with you, my man. So thank you.
Thank you, Jace. And look, thanks to you and the work you've done in Primal, I'm literally living my dream, which is to be in service in the most beautiful way. So thank you. Till next time.
Till next time. All right. Peace out, YouTube and Facebook and social media people. Till next time.